Hello, I'm Shannon Martin. Tonight's so-called freedom rallies across Canada today in protest of pandemic restrictions.
I think everybody has a choice.
We can't discriminate and force people to take something against their will.
This as Ontario is already set to lift some of its COVID measures. Plus,
there's been a lot of violence in the region. With this event, what seems so different is that it was all inside the hotel.
2 Canadians killed, another wounded in a shooting at a resort in Mexico. What we know so far, and celebrating a giant leap in Canadian space exploration. 30 years ago today, Roberta Bondar became the first Canadian woman in space.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Thanks for joining us. Rallies around the world today protesting public health measures, including Ottawa and Toronto, where restrictions are set to ease later this month. Lorenda Redicop now with our top story.
In Toronto, thousands gathered outside the Ontario legislature. Speakers included politicians who've become known for opposing vaccine mandates, lockdowns, and mask requirements.
He said, only 2 weeks.
For some here, a big issue is vaccines.
We can't discriminate and force people to take something against their will.
Everybody has a choice. I'm not going to tell people how to raise their kids. I just don't want anybody telling how to raise mine.
Though in Toronto, 90% of those eligible have at least 1 dose. And the province's science table says people with 2 doses have an 80% lower chance of ending up in hospital than the unvaccinated.
This rally in Toronto is much bigger than others held recently. It's one of many protests being held in cities around the world.
That includes London. Healthcare staff opposed to vaccine mandates joined protesters. People also marched in Paris, upset with a new vaccine passport that starts next week. Back in Canada, in Fredericton, police got involved, taking 2 people into custody. In Ottawa, people marched near Parliament Hill.
I feel like frustrated, but also I just feel like we should have a choice. I think it's being divided too much.
Ontario is easing some restrictions at the end of the month. And while hospitalizations still remain high, some doctors are optimistic.
Omicron came through here like a freight train. It went up fast, but it's also going down fast. People are getting out of the ICU much more than they did, for example, with Alpha and Delta. Hospitalization, the duration is less.
But there's also caution.
This is not the time to have a party with 49 of your closest friends. I think we need to be still a little bit careful, realize that when you're going to lift restrictions, they have to be very gradual.
All too slow for people here, some of whom have opposed lockdown measures for almost 2 years now. Lorenda Redicop, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, facing staffing shortages over the weekend, a hospital in Orangeville is asking workers to pick up extra shifts.
What's alarming to us today is hearing that unregulated staff are being asked to assist the nursing staff. It was reported to me that workers were told yesterday, Friday for sure, some on Thursday, that they would be asked to come in over the weekend, and once they get there, they would be told where they were assigned to work for the day.
Stewart says Headwaters Healthcare Centre put out the urgent call for more staffing, but says the redeployment of unregulated staff is causing additional stress on healthcare workers. The hospital has also reportedly asked paramedics for help. Our producers here today made multiple attempts to reach the hospital for comment, but we have yet to hear back. An open letter from Scarborough to the rest of the GTA is part of a massive new campaign shining a light on what advocates say is a significant gap in healthcare.
Dear Toronto, when will we all be treated equally? Because right now, the newest Canadians are in the oldest hospitals.
According to Scarborough Health Network, Scarborough accounts for 25% of Toronto's population, yet receives less than 1% of hospital donations. Now they've set a new historic fundraising goal, $100 million. To talk more about all of that is Dr. Colette Rutherford. She is a medical director at Scarborough Health Network. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
So we know there are 3 hospitals in Scarborough. You're serving not only one of the most diverse communities, but a really big one, more than 800,000 people. So can you talk to us as a doctor, what are some of the biggest challenges facing the hospitals right now?
I think one of the biggest challenges facing all 3 hospitals right now is just our aging infrastructure and our inability to really expand and give the kind of the breadth and width of services that we're ready to give to the population of Scarborough. And even in our regional programs, the population beyond Scarborough as well. We have hospitals that were built in the 1950s that have operating rooms from the 1950s. And so we offer amazing healthcare services to the population, but the staff at the hospital, we all know that we could be offering more. And the important thing to know is just the diversity and in that community. So 59% of the population we serve are newcomers to Canada. About 50% speak a language in their homes, their primary language other than English. And about 75% are visible minorities. So it's a special and unique population.
Right. The campaign is so powerful and the goal is big. It's $100 million. What would that kind of funding mean for the people of Scarborough accessing care?
Right. So we have to remember that $100 million is just our community share of the capital grants that the government is providing. And so, you know, the campaign and the donations are critical because without those donations, we simply cannot proceed, no matter how desired or how necessary the upgrades and expansions are. And we have several programs that are of specific impact in terms of this campaign. So there is the diagnostic imaging in terms of updating and expansion as well. There's the emergency department. All 3 of them need to be upgraded and expanded as well. We want to build a new community mental health hub to serve the population of Scarborough, as well as to increase the ability to provide dialysis services.
Well, we know you're doing critical work on the front lines. Thank you for taking the time on a day off today to talk to us about this.
No problem. If everybody could just, direct themselves just for more information to the campaign website. It's lovescarborough.ca.
Thank you so much. That's Dr. Colette Rutherford. She's with the Scarborough Health Network. Starting today, people entering the U.S., including Canadians, had to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. All those who are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents must declare their status and provide proof of vaccination. There will be no exceptions for essential travel. The changes were first announced back in October. Well, it may not feel like patio weather out there lately, but they have been a lifeline for struggling bars and restaurants these last few weeks. Recently, several in Toronto were forced to close. Talia Ricci finds out why, plus has reaction from the devastated business owners.
It wasn't an easy undertaking, enticing customers to eat and drink outside in the dead of winter.
We didn't have a choice. We had to see if this was going to work for us.
But when outdoor dining and takeout became the only options as Ontario stepped back in its roadmap to reopen, these businesses invested.
We put up our plexiglasses, we bought a bunch of heaters to ensure that it was warm.
We put in several $1,000s in labor, materials. We added two TVs, furnitures, security cameras.
Recently, both of those locations were told their outdoor patios had to shut down, citing a blitz done by the city. Other Toronto spots like Jules Bistro and Café Diplomatico shared similar news on social media.
It was classified as being too enclosed.
He said that we would have to either take the roof off or take a few walls down.
Toronto Public Health referred to the province's rules that a covered patio must have at least 2 full sides open to the outdoors and 1 full side if the roof is open.
So it's really a question of the mechanics of how big is the space, how many openings are there for air to circulate through? And it's not an all or nothing thing. The faster you can get complete air circulation, and if you can do that within, say, 15 minutes as an arbitrary number, the better off you're going to be.
These businesses say they did their best to balance safety and customer comfort, and this move is yet another hurdle.
This news was very upsetting to us. Not only does it impact the business revenue, it does impact our staff. We had to lay off some of our staff members, cut down staff hours. It was horrible.
As of yesterday, our sales dropped 90%.
Earlier this month, the province introduced a $10,000 grant for eligible small businesses that have been forced to close due to this latest round of restrictions. That does include restaurants and bars. But business owners who have been dealing with uncertainty for the past 2 years say there are still many challenges ahead.
At the end of the day, $10,000 doesn't go far. It's going to be a long time to recover from this. I mean, it's already been 2 years. If we can't operate full capacity, we're losing out on so much.
On January 31st, indoor dining will open again, but will be limited to half capacity. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
So it has been nearly a week since that huge blast of winter weather. The City of Toronto says it's still working on cleaning it all up. Officials say crews have been going 24 hours a day and will continue to do so until the work is done. Meantime, if your street hasn't been plowed, the city says you can call 311 to complain or maybe, offer a friendly suggestion. They're working hard, maybe not complain, Victoria. Victoria Finn Alvarado is here with our first look at the forecast and the cold. It's just hanging on.
Yes, Shannon, the cold is remaining. It's going to be a chilly weekend. The chill's remaining throughout the rest of the week, too. I'll get into that later on. But first, minus 12 is what it's going to feel like this evening. And we do have a little bit of a snow event. Not nearly anything close to what we saw last week. This is more of a squall event. So we do have wind gusts about 40 kilometers an hour, which could cause some reduced visibility on certain highways with some blowing snow. My producer was coming in across the QEW to get into Oakville, where our headquarters is, and he already reported some squalls there. We do have some danger zones on certain places. The 400 through the 11, 26 through the 400, and the 6 through the 21. So if you are commuting this evening, just be aware of that. Through the GTA, though, just trace amounts of snow, so not very similar, nothing close to what we saw last week. It's more so of a walk in the park, actually, and if you are walking in the park, be sure to bundle up. It's going to feel like minus 15. Through the afternoon, feeling like minus 14, really no relief. We do have a clipper coming on Monday and a low of minus 21 on Tuesday. I'll get into all of this in your long-range forecast later on in the newscast.
It just keeps coming. Thanks, Victoria.
See you later.
To Markham, where a man is dead after an interaction with police last night. The Special Investigations Unit is now looking into it. Here's what we know so far. Just after 9 o'clock last night, York police were called to this shopping plaza and say there was, quote, a suspicious person. The SIU refers to a vehicle, though it's unclear at this hour if it was that white sedan you saw earlier in a snowbank. Following some kind of interaction, the man was shot by an officer. He later died in hospital. A woman inside a vehicle was also arrested for firearm charges. There's still much more to come on this story. We'll bring you any updates as we learn them. Well, to the latest now in that deadly shooting at a resort in Mexico. 2 Canadians were killed. Tonight, we are hearing from Mexican authorities that the victims and suspect are all known to police here in Canada. Georgie Smythe has more.
Investigations continue at a plush beachside resort after a shooting that left 2 Canadian men dead and a third on the run. Unverified video of the shooting on Friday was captured inside the Xcaret Hotel in Playa del Carmen, a coastal resort town in Mexico just south of Cancun. The video shows bystanders inside the resort looking on as victims lie on the ground in a dining area by a pool. Mexican police say 2 34-year-old Canadian men were killed. A 29-year-old Canadian woman survived. Local authorities at Quintana Roo State say they've been in contact with Canadian police, who claim the deceased men both have criminal records. Police released several images on Twitter of a man in a grey tracksuit walking with a handgun, believed to have been a guest of the hotel. They say he's fled into the jungle and is wanted in connection with the shooting. Global Affairs Canada say the federal government is aware of reports Canadian citizens have been affected by an incident in Mexico and are working with local authorities.
Those kind of incidents are very, very rare.
Walter McKay is a policing expert on security issues in Mexico.
There are a few incidents that have happened over a couple decades of guests targeting other guests, but that's not something anybody can control, whether you're in Canada or anywhere.
The shooting follows a flurry of recent violent incidents in beach resorts in the region, at the same time as many Canadians head to Mexico, drawn by the heat and relaxed COVID restrictions. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Welcome back. We're heading overseas now. A shipment of U.S. military aid has arrived in Ukraine as tension with Russia escalates. That aid includes ammunition for troops on the front lines. U.S. government officials say the shipment demonstrates its commitment to Ukraine's right to defend itself. The equipment arrived hours after Russia's foreign minister and his U.S. counterpart held talks aimed at de-escalating the tensions. The U.S. has warned of a tough response to any invasion by Russia, which has been gathering troops near the border. To the world of sports, the New York Islanders are mourning one of the team's earliest stars.
But Pearson intercepts into Gillies. Clark Gillies should the
Yes, Hall of Fame left winger Clark Gillies has died. The Islanders drafted him ahead of what was just their third season. 6 years later, he helped lead the team to its first Stanley Cup, the first of 4 consecutive championships. He spent 12 seasons with the team before 2 final campaigns in Buffalo. Clark Gillies was 67. Well, turning to another icon now, this one in the world of space exploration. 30 years ago, Roberta Bondar became the first Canadian woman to go to space. The Pride of Sault Ste. Marie led an international research team that explored how the body can best adapt during and after space flight. Dale Manukduk takes a look at her incredible career and how she continues to inspire.
And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery. 30 years later, launch of the Space Shuttle Discovery is just as breathtaking. Dr. Roberta Bondar, however, says the view was much better from above.
Looking at the edge of the Earth from space, I mean, those are things that we can't do down here. It's that view and that reality that the Earth is a planet. I mean, it's not just storybook time.
Following him is payload specialist Roberta Bondar.
But before defying gravity and the waves to the cheering crowds was years of training, and decades before that, a dream.
And I do remember there's a picture of me early on. I don't know if I was maybe 2 or 3 with binoculars trying to look up to the night sky.
You know, I had those dreams when I was a child of becoming an astronaut.
Isabelle Tremblay is the Director of Astronauts and Space Medicine at the Canadian Space Agency. She was studying mechanical engineering when Dr. Bondar took off.
It really reignited my aspirations to work in space and space exploration. That made it very real for me.
As it has for many others, including Jenny City Gibbons, who was just 3 years old at the time and is now a Canadian astronaut.
Dr. Bondar's flight kind of made it feel like you didn't have to be scared, right? That there were all these possibilities and that the world was really open.
Her ability to empower women is matched by her contribution to science and space travel.
Back at that time, about half the people that flew in space were getting sick, and you don't want to throw up in zero gravity. So she brought up experiments to try to find out why and what can be done about it.
Her groundbreaking work on microgravity is still being applied today. Dr. Bondar is still inspiring people, especially women, as a nature photographer, and through her own foundation, concentrated on conservation efforts.
My parents really ran interference for both my sister and me about traditional ways that people view little girls and what they should be doing, what they should be interested in, and what the world could be for them if they had equal access to things that men were doing.
30 years ago, when Dr. Bondar was recruited, we had about 11% of women in the process.
A few years ago, it hit 30%. Tremblay hopes to get it to 50%. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
And finally tonight, it's Lunar New Year for Canada's Vietnamese community. Here's a look at how some are celebrating virtually. Yes, it's the largest holiday in the Vietnamese calendar. This year will mark the Year of the Tiger, symbolizing strength, confidence, courage, and generosity. Victoria's back. I feel like I need a little strength and courage to face the forecast because it sounds, like it's just keeping coming at us with the snow and the cold.
I know, it's not my favorite either. It's the type of cold you take a deep breath and you feel like your nose hair is freezing. Not my favorite at all. I mentioned the squalls earlier. We do currently have some warnings in effect. Snowfall warnings, snow squall warnings, and all of this yellow, that's actually because of the cold Arctic air. The next couple days, we're going to experience some of the coldest air that we will experience this season. So I mentioned the Clipper earlier. Don't be fearful of it. Let's take a look at it. So first, the Clipper is going to come in on Monday. We're going to see the heaviest snowfall totals through the shores of Huron and Georgian Bay. Toronto, though, we're just estimating about 2 to 5 centimeters possible, but it's fast moving. This is when it's coming in on your Monday. Now, the timing really is critical here because this could be happening at a time when you are commuting on your way home from work on Monday if you don't have the luxury of working from home. With that being said, we do have some wind gusts similar to today, upwards of 50 kilometers an hour, which could cause some reduced visibility. That's why I'm mentioning your commute on Monday. Just take note here. So Monday morning, the snow's coming in through the west, Windsor, London, and by the evening, Toronto will see that. Through the overnight, Kingston and Ottawa will now see the snowfall there. Now, we really do have the temperatures to look at. That's a whole other story. -12 for your Monday was what it's going to feel like. Tuesday, it's going to feel like -14 in Toronto. And take a look at that. A low of -21 on Tuesday. That's some of the coldest air we're going to experience. And Ottawa, my apologies, -27 is what it's going to feel like for your Wednesday. So be sure to bundle up and stay warm the next few days.
Yes, deep breaths, like you said. Thanks, Victoria.
No problem.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.